In total, that means that the department produced approximately 3.5 million pages in compliance with the act.
Literally millions of Jeffrey Epstein files have just been released. And these are new details. These are things about President Trump. These are things about Bill Gates. These are things about Bill Clinton. And these are things about Elon Musk. We are going to try to get to some of the highlights of some things that are happening right now and maybe give us details and a glimpse into Jeffrey Epstein's world. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. All right, quite the update for you. So the DOJ announcing today that they are releasing more than 3 million pages of files in the Jeffrey Epstein probe. Now, this, of course, is pursuant to a Transparency Act that was passed by Congress. And we got to get into what we're seeing here. Now, to be clear, we're not going through 3 million pages, but we do have some highlights that we got to address. We got to put into context, too. I should also note that what is not being released and what we will probably never likely see, I should note that as well. There are things, according to Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, that are allowed to be withheld under the law. These are files that contain, personally identifiable information of victims, victims' personal and medical files, any similar files, any depiction of child sexual abuse material, anything that would jeopardize an active federal investigation. Maybe that's a bit broad. And we may never actually know what any of this may be, but we got to take the government at its word. Anything that depicts or contains images of death, physical abuse, or injury, files covered by various privileges, so things like that. Actually, here's a section of what Todd Blanche had to say.
We complied with the act, and there is no we did not protect President Trump. We didn't protect or not protect anybody. I mean, I think that there's a hunger or a thirst for information that I do not think will be satisfied by the review of these documents. And there's nothing I can do about that.
Okay, so now there's a lot here to get through. Like, for example, Epstein accomplice, convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell. Her arrest photos are in there. This includes pictures from her home in New Hampshire where she was picked up. How about this? An email between First Lady Melania Trump and Ghislaine Maxwell from 2002, where she seemingly writes, "Dear G, how are you? Nice story about J.E., Jeffrey Epstein, in New York Mag. You look great in the picture." Or how about the current U.S. Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, who is apparently a neighbor of Jeffrey Epstein in New York City, where he allegedly sent an email to Epstein's assistant in 2015 inviting Epstein to a Democratic fundraiser for Hillary Clinton. Remember, Clinton ran against Trump? Oh, and then there's this. Bill Gates looking to get STD medication. Bombshell allegation that President Trump assaulted a minor. We're going to put that one into context, though. A lot here, a lot I want to get into, and there's definitely more about President Trump. There's more about former President Bill Clinton, Elon Musk. I want to bring on attorney Richard Schoenstein, though, to discuss all this. Rich, thanks so much for taking the time to do this. There's a big points that we're going to get into, but just general thoughts on the release so far. After you have read 3 million pages, what are your main takeaways?
Yeah, well, I haven't read every line or watched every video or looked at every photo, and there's a lot here. But I think of it sort of the same way I think about litigation, where there are often very large document productions. And parties like to justify the way they're acting in litigation by saying, look at how many documents we produced. We produced so many documents. But often it's what's not produced. And my understanding here is there's a substantial amount of material that still hasn't been produced, and a substantial amount of material that is redacted. So we're going to look at what has been produced and analyze it as best we can, but this is not complete.
Okay, so let's start with what has been produced. And I have to start with the bombshell, okay? This bombshell concerning the President Trump. Now, there is apparently a sexual assault allegation that I'm about to read, and I want to put it into context. It seems the Department of Justice made a list of all of the sexual assault claims against the president. We don't really know why they put this list together, but it should be noted these are tips, meaning they're unverified claims. And according to CNN, this list was in an email that was sent from the FBI New York's field office to the Child Exploitation and Human Trafficking Task Force. So you could also argue this looks to be secondhand information, maybe even third-hand information in many cases. Now, the DOJ made that clear in a statement. Quote, "This production may include fake or falsely submitted images, documents, or videos, as everything that was sent to the FBI by the public was included in the production that is responsive to the act. Some of the documents contain untrue and sensationalistic claims against President Trump, that were submitted to the FBI right before the 2020 election. To be clear, the claims are unfounded and false, and if they have a shred of credibility, they certainly would have been weaponized against President Trump already. Put that to the side. But we are going to warn you, the allegations made in these tips are very disturbing. For example, quote, Redacted reported an unidentified female friend who was forced to perform oral sex on President Trump approximately 35 years ago in New Jersey. The friend told Alexis that she was approximately 13 to 14 years old when this occurred, and the friend allegedly bit President Trump while performing. The friend was allegedly hit in the face after laughing about biting President Trump. The friend said she was also abused by Epstein. And the log states that this tip was sent to the Washington office to conduct an interview. The next tip reads, Redacted reported she had a friend, Redacted, who was a personal assistant to Epstein in Florida from 1986 until 1991 or 1992. This friend shared names of the guests at Epstein's parties to include Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. Now, there's a call log that indicates that 2 voicemails were left for this complainant, but there was never a response. And then you have a tipster who connects the Alexander brothers, you know, the guys that are under federal indictment. They're in federal trial right now in New York for allegedly sex trafficking women. We've been covering it here on Sidebar. They allegedly have a connection to Epstein. Quote, at age 16, while modeling, caller attended 8 parties at Epstein's New York residence. On one occasion, caller reported she was sexually assaulted by Epstein. On another occasion, 2 twin brothers, Alon and Orrin, lured caller and her friend upstairs, but they escaped back downstairs. Caller stated Orrin raped her best friend, and a third brother, Tal, raped a 14-year-old girl named Redacted. Caller named other individuals involved in, quote, big orgy parties with her, other young girls, and older Victoria's Secret models, including Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. Online complainant reported she was a victim and witness to a sex trafficking ring at the Trump golf course in Rancho Palos Verdes, California between 1995 and 1996. Complainant reported Ghislaine Maxwell as the madam and broker for sex parties, clients of whom included Epstein, Robin Leach, and Donald Trump. Quote, the guests were older men and included Elon Musk, Don Jr., Ivanka Trump, and Eric Trump were there. Attorney Alan Dershowitz was also there with attorney Bob Shapiro. We were taken in rooms, forced to give to Donald Trump, forced to allow, I think this says, penetration. I was 13 years old when Donald J. Trump raped me. Ghislaine Maxwell was also present. Okay, Rich, what do we make of this? I mean, because there does become a question of whether or not these are credible claims.
Yeah, and that's really difficult, Jesse. You know, on one hand, some of what's asserted here is consistent with other allegations we've heard over the years against the president and certainly against Jeffrey Epstein, right? This is consistent with things we've heard. But in these files, it's not. It's sort of sometimes secondhand or thirdhand hearsay. These are allegations. These are not things that were proven in court. These are not things that were taken to court. And in fairness, it's hard to give them that much credibility without knowing more. Now, if you had these allegations, you might want to do an investigation. And I'm a little bit put back by the DOJ saying, you know, these are meritless or these are false or none of this is true. That seems to go too far the other direction. But I don't know that we have enough information here to say we've established additional criminal conduct.
It is interesting to note, if we're questioning the transparency of the DOJ, if you really believe they were going to hide information, they never would have released this. I mean, at the very least, it's embarrassing for the president. No? I mean, so does it not give you a little bit of hope that they are releasing everything that they can release?
I see the argument to that extent. I think the DOJ has a credibility problem right off the bat because the guy who's leading this was Trump's personal lawyer. So I don't know how much credibility you can have when you're spearheading an investigation and you've come directly from Donald Trump's legal team to the DOJ to do this. That's a credibility problem. And the DOJ over the past year has had tons of credibility problems. They have credibility problems right now based on what they've said about what's happening in Minneapolis. I mean, they're telling us things that obviously aren't true if you've watched videotape. So they have a big credibility problem. It's hard to take them at their word about any of this, frankly.
Let me ask you, and to be clear, law enforcement has never accused the president of any wrongdoing regarding Epstein. He's never been criminally charged or implicated. Let me ask you about Elon Musk. Elon Musk has come up in this. So Elon Musk comes up in this document dump in an email exchange from December 2013. Quote, "Will be in the BVI," so the British Virgin Islands, / St. Bart's area over the holidays. Is there a good time to visit? And then a response from JEE Vacation responds, "I will send heli for you," probably meaning like a helicopter for you. Quote, "Actually, I could fly back early on the 3rd. We will be in St. Bart's. When should we head to your island on the 2nd? Quote, "Did we need to organize Elon to your island on January 2nd? Now that's interesting because Musk had previously tweeted, "Epstein tried to get me to go to his island and I refused." Now it's unclear if Musk ever actually followed through with this trip, but it wasn't just the travel to the island that was discussed via email. There's one from September 2012 that reads, "What does JE think of going to Mar-a-Lago after Christmas instead of his island?" And the sender and recipient are both redacted, but it's kind of unclear whether if this was a response to this. But again, it does make me question when I read something like this, Rich, big name, flashy, but there were people who were always connected to Epstein and people who may have traveled on his jet or in his inner circle. Doesn't automatically equate to guilt. It doesn't automatically equate to them being involved in criminal activity or having knowledge of criminal activity. But I do wonder if it actually supports Elon Musk in a way.
I don't know. It is true. Jeffrey Epstein had social interactions with a whole lot of rich and powerful people, including Donald Trump, including Bill Clinton, and possibly including Elon Musk and many others. And that is something unfortunate that we've learned, that a person who had so many, did so many bad things, was able to establish these connections with the rich and powerful. But it doesn't mean that everybody he had a connection with engaged in criminal activity. I would be shocked if it meant that. So, and I wouldn't be surprised if people who did have contact with Jeffrey Epstein tried to downplay that in the wake of what we all know, even if the contact was innocent.
Let me ask you this. Based on Todd Blanche's statement that they can redact anything that's part of an ongoing investigation, does this mean that they're not, I wouldn't be surprised, it's the president's own DOJ, but that they're not investigating Elon Musk, they're not investigating President Trump, and I'll talk about Bill Clinton in a minute, I'll talk about Bill Gates in a minute. Does that mean that they're not investigating them? Because otherwise they wouldn't be able to release this information, right?
I don't necessarily connect that. First of all, there's sometimes some of this stuff gets released and then pulled back. I think even today there have been some instances of things that were released and then pulled back. I don't have any reason to believe that the Department of Justice is investigating the president or Elon Musk for anything. I would be frankly surprised if they were, but I don't take that from what's been released. I just assume that from other facts.
Now, let's talk about former President Bill Clinton, who has come up quite a lot in the Jeffrey Epstein conversation. When Epstein sat for a deposition, this came out today, when Epstein sat for a deposition in the Virginia Giuffre lawsuit, this is an Epstein accuser. Remember, she filed a lawsuit against Ghislaine Maxwell, a defamation lawsuit. This was unsealed, I believe, in 2024. In this deposition from 2016, he sits down and he would always invoke his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination when he was asked about his connection or association or friendship with President Bill Clinton or the Clinton Foundation. For example, it was questions like, please describe all dinners you've ever had with Bill Clinton. And he would say, the fifth, please describe all dinners you and Maxwell have ever had with Bill Clinton. Fifth, please describe all dinners you, Maxwell, and Virginia have had with Bill Clinton. Fifth. Or how about this exchange? Isn't it true that at the time period 2000 to 2001, you were close friends with Bill Clinton? Fifth. And even to 2002, you remain close friends with Bill Clinton, right? Fifth. Bill Clinton flew on your jet a number of times in 2002, right? Fifth. In May of 2002, Bill Clinton was on your jet several times, right? Fifth. How about this one? You've heard of the Clinton Foundation, right? Fifth. Please describe all of your interactions with the Clinton Foundation. Fifth, is it true that you helped Bill Clinton organize the Clinton Foundation? Fifth, did you discuss with Bill Clinton the idea of creating a foundation? Fifth. Now, Clinton has always denied the allegations. He's always denied having any knowledge of what Epstein was up to. His spokesperson said that the president cut off ties with the disgraced financier before he was charged with soliciting prostitution in 2006. But is it strange to you, Rich, that he kept invoking the fifth every 5 seconds when it came to Clinton?
So sometimes defendants or witnesses will cut off an entire line of questioning with a Fifth Amendment right. And so it may be that he was under the view that if he was asked anything about Clinton, he would take the fifth and not answer it, as was his right as being, a criminal defendant or under investigation or whatever he was at that moment. There's nothing we can do about that. I do think it's a little troubling that Bill Clinton hasn't been more forthcoming with answers about all of this stuff, other than just kind of a general denial. I find that disappointing as well.
When you couple that also with the photos that were released of Clinton recently, right, in the pool, the hot tub, whatever it was. And by the way, the Clintons recently refused a subpoena from the House Oversight Committee to have them testify. There's now a question. The House voted to hold the Clintons in contempt. You tell me, does this cast a suspicious net around him?
Sure. I think you're justified to say, gee, Clinton, made some trips to Trump Epstein Island, and what's that all about, and why is he refusing to answer questions about it? And I understand that people have questions about that. And I understand people saying he should have answered the congressional subpoena, and those proceedings will play out however they play out. I will say, though, that Bill Clinton is no longer president and hasn't been in several decades and is not running for office and has maybe a lesser need to justify himself in public than other people.
By the way, if you want a full breakdown of what it could mean for the president to possibly be held in contempt, Jesse Weber Live on News Nation. I did a full breakdown of that Monday through Friday.
Great show.
Go
get it.
Eastern.
Go get it.
Thank you. Okay, so back to this. I have to talk about Bill Gates. This was another bombshell. So back in 2013, the way that I'm understanding this is Jeffrey Epstein allegedly claimed that the Microsoft co-founder was basically looking to get some medication to treat an STD because of having sex with Russian girls, okay? So Epstein had apparently penned this draft email on behalf of a Gates advisor because this person looks like wanted to leave the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So it says, quote, "During the past few weeks, I've been caught up in a severe marital dispute between Melinda and Bill. In my role as his right hand, I have been asked on multiple occasions and in hindsight wrongly acquiesced into participating in things that have ranged from the morally inappropriate to the ethically unsound, and had been repeatedly asked to do other things that get near and potentially over the line into the illegal. From helping Bill to get drugs in order to deal with consequences of sex with Russian girls, to facilitating his illicit trysts with married women, to being asked to provide Adderall. I feel I owe it to my friends and future colleagues to admit a moral failure, to ask forgiveness, and to move on with my life." And then there is apparently a separate draft email to Bill Gates, where again Epstein is portraying himself as this advisor. Called Bill Gates said that he's engaged in a cover-up so that you can maintain the reputation that you've worked so hard to achieve. Implore me to please delete the emails regarding your STD. You request that I provide you antibiotics that you can surreptitiously give to Melinda, and the description of your I am concerned that if Melinda decides, as you said, to file for a public divorce, the damage done to the pledge program alone would result in billions of dollars of money no longer being used for social good, as I'm sure that some wives and husbands would feel free to retreat from their commitments. Now, this is a complicated one, Rich. So again, it's like Epstein speaking on behalf of somebody else. I have no idea if these allegations are true, but your thoughts?
Yeah, well, and that's a big problem with this entire endeavor. So these are salacious allegations. There have been, those kind of allegations about Bill Gates in the past, and there often are those kind of allegations against the rich and powerful. But a problem with this Epstein file endeavor is documents don't usually prove anything standing alone. And releasing the documents, like I'm for it. I think transparency is good. I don't see why these were withheld. I think there's some value here, but it's going to be hard to prove anything unless you have government offices investigating earnestly and prosecuting when they're aware of misconduct. You're not going to get to the bottom of it and get, criminal convictions and the like. Otherwise, all you're going to get are millions of documents and millions of questions.
Now, a spokesperson for Bill Gates has rejected any allegations that were laid out here and basically said these claims are absolutely absurd and completely false. The only thing these documents demonstrate is Epstein's frustration that he did not have an ongoing relationship with Gates and the lengths he would go to entrap and defame. By the way, just going back to Epstein, we talk about so many other people. Look at this allegation that Epstein assaulted a minor girl after she told him she previously had been molested. Okay, apparently she told the FBI this back in 2021. It's from a 302. It's a witness interview. We don't know if the FBI found evidence to substantiate this, but the notes say that this victim felt degraded when she went to Epstein's place, that she felt taken advantage of, that she said she also felt happy because she got a bunch of money from massages, but clearly this is just another point in Epstein's playbook. So you couple that, Rich, with the Gates thing, right? It goes to this pattern of power, taking advantage of people, trying to compromise them. I mean, there are aspects of this, we think about everybody else, but it does go back to the evil that was Jeffrey Epstein.
Oh, 100%. Jeffrey Epstein was a horrible person and did many terrible things, including some of the things we're talking about, but also in a business sense. And he turned on people. He could not be trusted. You would not trust him if he was testifying. If he was testifying and he didn't take the fifth, you wouldn't trust him. And you can't really trust what he wrote in an email years and years and years ago. And it makes this endeavor, again, very difficult because you have an inherently untrustworthy source writing things that are not complete thoughts in any event. It just becomes very hard to piece it together.
Okay, let's see where this goes. I'm sure we'll maybe do another episode because there's going to be more things that come out of 3 million documents. Rich Schoenstein, 3 million pages, I should say. Rich Schoenstein, great seeing you. Thanks for taking the time. As always, appreciate it.
Always my pleasure to be here. See you soon.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. Also, we're up on NBC's Peacock as well. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, Jesse Weber Live, my show on News Nation, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you next time, everybody.